The weekly sermons of 45th Street Baptist Church are now available as a podcast through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Do you know how powerful this is? Do you know what it means in your life? Or maybe I should ask the question, does it mean anything in your life? Until you learn how to study it and see what God is saying to you, you'll never really be able to fulfill your purpose. Come on and join us. Join us for 45 minutes of purpose here at 45th Street Baptist Church. I guarantee you'll come out thinking differently. And my prayer is, somewhere along the line, you'll find the purpose that God has for you. Come on in and join us.
Welcome to 45 Minutes of Purpose with Reverend Andre D. Sparks.
Those days. Day is one of those days where you just have technical problems. I don't know what caused it, but it's been happening today. I'm so glad to be with you tonight. Thanks for being patient. I understand some you have difficulties. I'm so glad that you came on back in so we can talk. Today has been a day of honoring veterans here in our community. And I'm so glad that that you're going to spend it with us. Hope this volume sounds a little bit better. I'm on a new laptop, so that may be causing some of my problems. Get it all worked out. If not, I'm going back to the old. That sounds a little bit better. I was just told by my producer that we were having some volume problems. We have two things I need to tell you about before we get started. First, church family mourning the loss of one of our beloved, long-term, lifetime Sister Odessa Cowan. Lord called her home. Blessed to live to the ripe old age of 90. Certainly thank God for her and her fellowship. Ask if you would to please be prayerful for her family, all of her family. Notably, her brother Larry Lewis, who died. And of course, her sister-in-law, Evelyn Gardner, is in that family. Prayerful for all of them as we prepare to celebrate her life, whichever way the family puts together. I can't tell you what that is, but they haven't, of course, done the thing. They'll let you prayerful for them. God bless us. There's a couple of blocks over from the church, and into they will walk over to the church. Then the second thing I want to ask you to do is make sure, if you haven't already, you're appreciative to all these veterans, all of these conflicts. Some who were never in a conflict, but simply served in the military. Be prayerful for all of them. I'm going to see if turning up my volume is going to help. Maybe that'll help. Serving in the military has been an honor for me, and I thank God for the opportunity. So glad to be here with you today to be able to talk about it. Of course, we know the difference between Memorial Day and Veterans Day. Veterans Day is, of course, is for those who served in any of the military branches and the Coast Guard. And we also thank God for those who have died in combat. The nation has chosen to reserve Memorial Day. Don't get those. Both are important, but there is an important thing. All gave some, but some gave all. Celebrate that on Memorial Day. We're still in our Bible study on miracles in Mark, and I'm excited. We're still talking about why Jesus performed miracles, both his purpose in performing them, what did he intend to show when he was performing them. And we've been talking about how he was showing his mastery, his lordship over physical maladies. We talked about lepers. We talked about someone who was lame. Tonight we're going to talk about someone who has another physical malady, but there's a whole lot of political intrigue, whole lot of political intrigue, and I want you to make sure you pay attention as we go through and identify all of the factors involved, because it wasn't just the physical act or the act of healing that he was also teaching the theology and the substance of what he and what our God is all about. And there were people who were actively working against him doing this because he was tearing down structures when he was doing this. He was tearing down the standards that were in the community and building up a new appreciation for what it was all about to be serving the Lord. We're in Mark chapter 3 tonight. Mark chapter 3, 6 verses we want to read. You'll allow me to read them in your hearing, and we'll get into trying to tell you a little bit about them. Mark wrote in verse 1, he entered again into a synagogue, and a man was there whose hand was withered. They were watching him to see if he would heal him on the Sabbath, so that they might accuse him. Verse 3, he said to the man with the withered hand, get up and come forward. And he said to them, folks, is it lawful, good, or to do harm on the Sabbath, to save a life or to kill? They kept silent. Verse 5, after looking around at them with anger, grieved at the hardness of their heart, he said to the man, stretch out your hand. Stretched it out. Hand was restored. Pharisees went out and immediately conspiring with the Herodians against him, began conspiring with the Herodians against him as to how they might destroy him. Now, I hope you're paying attention to this whole process, this whole dialogue. Go to a synagogue, seated in the synagogue are some people laying in wait. They almost baiting him something because they want to catch him in some technical violations of what they call the rabbinical law. They want to make sure he has done something wrong so they can accuse him of being a charlatan, a magician of sorts. So he entered again into a synagogue. Now you got to know this, that Jesus is not going to be scared away from wherever there's a conflict because he's in control of everything. And so he already knows they're in there waiting on him. He already knows they're trying to set him up. He already knows that this man is coming in with a withered hand. Watch me now. Jesus is not going to run away from that. Do you? Do you know there's something that needs to be confronted, some truth that needs to be brought? Run away from it? Or do you approach it? It takes courage. It also takes a firm assurance of who you are and what you're able to do. That doesn't mean it doesn't come with problems. But as long as you have that confidence and assurance, you're able to come in and watch this. Verse 2 says, they were watching him. Hey, that were watching him. Well, first of all, everybody was. There were so many groups of people around, but they were all watching him to see what he might try to do or what he would do. Remember now, we're talking about the same Jesus who has already healed a man with leprosy. We're talking about the same Jesus who has already healed a man in the middle of a service in a house, got the most famous lame man in the community up off his pallet and told him to get up and walk. He did that on the faith of his friends who cut a hole in the roof. How long do you think it took before that news got around? So they done tore up John's house down here and dropped the man through the roof, and Jesus healed him. That doesn't take long to get around. You don't have to have any social media other than the social media I grew up with, and that's word of mouth for folks to know that something special is going on here, and here comes this man. But just as there were people who were excited about what Jesus was doing, some who were curious about what Jesus was doing, there were also some who were furious. They were furious about what Jesus was doing. They were mad because he was showing them up. They've been selling whatever they could sell their wares, and Jesus Christ, without doing this, they needed to put a stop to it, because if they didn't put a stop to it, everybody was going to be believing this man. And nobody was going to be believing what they were preaching in the temple anymore. So here comes Jesus. He comes into the synagogue on the Sabbath. What's unusual about that? That's normal. But there's some teaching that needs to be done on here. See, the crux of the problem that we have here is not even so much that Jesus came in to do the healing. That's not the part they wanted to catch him in. What they wanted to catch him in was doing it on the Sabbath. Healing this man on the Sabbath. Now you might say, what? How would that be a problem? Let's see if we can delve into it. Originally, we know that when the Lord gave the commandments, the covenant with the people, with the Jewish people, the Hebrew people, after they came out, when he gave us those commandments, he took a day, and said that seventh day that I rested after creation, I set it aside as a day of Sabbath day. This wasn't no man-made holiday. Congress didn't have to vote on this. This was given to us by God. This is a day of rest. It was given to us in covenant perpetually, God. That there is, of the 7 days, one of them is set aside. No labor shall be performed on that day. Nothing could be done on that day other than utter devotion and reverence God. Now let's talk about that theoretically. I mean, God set aside a day for us to honor him. It's been interpreted that way. It's been practiced that way forever. There are some who might argue which day is the day of rest. Is it the first day of the week, Sunday, as we say it on our calendar, or is it the last day on the week, as it was talked about in the Bible? That last day, if you count from Sunday, would be Saturday, or the Sabbath would be that day. That's a conversation that probably takes longer than we have tonight. God set aside a day, Sabbath. We celebrated on Sunday, the first day of the week. We know biblically it was the last day after he had made everything else, and then he rested. And the rest was in celebration of what he had done. The rest was in honor of what he had done. How do people know you're a believer? One of the reasons they know that you follow God is how you treat the Sabbath day. At least that used to be. People who celebrated the Sabbath day absolutely did not work on that day. But you know, and I know that time to change. I remember a time in my lifetime, in these 56 years, when you couldn't buy alcohol on Sunday, when there were certain stores that were not open on Sunday. We were such an Orthodox community at that time that we reverenced the day as a holy day throughout. Nobody worked that day. You certainly wouldn't be involved in any extracurricular activities like football games or things like that. It just didn't happen. Over time, those social standards have diminished, and people now do whatever. You can't hardly distinguish Sunday from any other day. Not from any other day, and that's a complicated thing. Because now we have services, church services on demand. You can get a worship service at any time, under any circumstance. There is no way you can distinguish believers from non-believers. There's no way. And so it's confusing. But at that time, you could tell those who were Jewish, because they had a Sabbath day, they reverence. Today still, sundown on Friday, Sabbath starts for Jews. We still celebrate that today, still. Oh yeah, remember, can I bring it back to you? Remember when Jesus was crucified? And they died according to scripture. Max Lucado writes a book, if I can turn around on this book and pull it off. It's called 6 Hours One Friday. From 9 o'clock in the morning until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Jesus Christ paid the ultimate price, the heavenly price for you and I to be saved. 3 o'clock, he died. Whatever else is happening, they have to get his body down from the cross. Joseph of Arimathea has to go and petition the Romans to get Jesus' body down so they can take him and place him in a borrowed tomb. Joseph had already bought a tomb for himself. He's going to allow Jesus to lie there. But they had to get his body down and they had to get him bathed up enough so they could put his body into the tomb before sundown. Because at Sabbath, they couldn't do any more work. And so they had about 3 hours to go petition the Romans, get Jesus' body down, transport him to the hillside where the sepulchre was, and leave him there. They had 3 hours to do that. That's how important the Sabbath was. We're talking about during the time that Jesus was alive. So Sabbath was extremely important. They didn't believe in doing any work. The first thing you need to know is that the Sabbath was not made for its own sake. All right? No. It was specifically given to us, mankind, as a service to us. In other words, work these days, honor and reverence and rest on this day. That's what God gave us. He gave us the Sabbath on account of us, for us. So let's talk about that a little bit more now, because some of us have taken that just a little bit too far. If it's my day, they feel like I can do what I want to do. Mankind has always done that, interpreted laws the way he wants them interpreted. Most of the time when we do that, sin creeps in. Most of the time we do it is for our benefit, by his benefit. So the Sabbath is, let me see if I can get some help in here. Do some screen share here and see if I can get you up to date on this with your outline. Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. I gotta know. It's one of those nights. Genesis 2, 1 through 3 tells us about how Jesus, about how God wanted us to deal with the Sabbath. Talk to us. Typically, I got in your outline that he set the seventh day apart specifically and linked it to creation. Linked it to it. Typically had us tied to that day. I'm trying to do something with it. Hold on. There you go. So God, in establishing the Sabbath, is primarily creating it for man's part in the whole creation story. In other words, God has given us an opportunity to participate with him in the whole creation story. And just as he rested on that day, he allowed us to do it. But the day is not just for physical rest. While it's a gift from the Creator for us, for our participation in. Remember now, he gave Adam the opportunity to name everything, to order the animals, gave him responsibility for it. But the truth of the matter is, though he gave us those opportunities, it wasn't just given to us that last day to rest. No. It wasn't just given to us to rest. It was given to us so that we could understand his authority and the purpose of him creating the entire world for us. Watch this now. This is the problem that we have in this story. That God created the Sabbath day not just for humanity. I don't know what's going on. I'm going to follow me. God created the Sabbath day not just for the Jews, he created the Sabbath for all of humanity, for everybody. But the Jews have turned it on its head and they created their own sub rules about how you have to operate on the Sabbath day. That brings us to the story at hand. The Jews have said no work can be done on the Sabbath day. Nothing. Nothing. You'll get in a world of trouble for trying to do something on the Sabbath day. And so Jesus comes into the temple that day, into the synagogue that day, and they're waiting on him, knowing that there's someone in there who is hurt. They're waiting on him to violate the Sabbath by healing someone, because in their definition of what you're supposed to do on the Sabbath, healing somebody was a violation of what God intended. Right? In the teaching that we found from Jewish scholars of that time, minor cures were not permitted on the Sabbath day. All right, you can save a life according to them. That's a different matter. That might pass muster. All right, might be okay saving somebody's life. But the rule against cure said it not only did it apply to regular people, it applies to physicians. Because if a physician was applying cures on the Sabbath day, that was a violation of the intent according to God. All right, that's what he was teaching. That's what they were teaching them in the synagogue. Comes in knowing that this was the standard they set, knowing that it was a violation of what God intended. The Pharisees disputed among themselves at that time whether prayer for the sick was even permitted on the Sabbath day, indicating that even prayer might be work that was not supposed to happen. And so Jesus' opponents were in there that day laying a trap to see if Jesus was going to be Jesus. They wanted to know if Jesus was going to show up and do what Jesus does. They wanted to know if Jesus was going to show up and not heal somebody who needed some help. Problem they had is that Jesus knew it. He knew it because they wanted to call him out and pull him before a Jewish council and convict him of violating the healing or the cures on the Sabbath day. They went to considerable strength. Whether they had the man with the withered hand on their payroll or whether they had set him up to come in there, I don't know. All I know is you're not smart enough to get around Jesus. You're not swift enough to do that. And they were trying really, really hard. Jesus, watch this now. Now, which my PowerPoint was working right, because the first thing is God made the Sabbath for humanity, not just for the Jews. All right? That's important because the Jews had claimed that they only could create the rules surrounding how you're supposed to spend the Sabbath, which means that Jewish rules had to apply to everybody in the community. You know, and I know that doesn't make sense. This was a multifaceted community, and everybody wasn't going to follow their rules. Not only that, the Jews had to interact with other people, which meant commerce was still going on in other parts of the city. And in order for Jews to be able to operate properly, guess what? They had to sometimes interact with those other people, sometimes that worked for us on the Sabbath. They tried to hold it as strictly as they could, but there were sometimes minor violations of it. Those minor violations came with swift consequences from the temple. Third point that came out of this is that Jesus claims the authority as the Lord who created the Sabbath for God to show us how to keep it. All right? To teach us how to keep the Sabbath, not whether we should keep it. That's important. Jesus is the one who has the authority to teach us what is appropriate on the Sabbath day. That's his job to teach us what we should do, not whether we should keep it. All right? He's teaching us how to observe the Sabbath day. And here we have someone who is in need, someone who is struggling, someone who has lived his life with this withered hand. Withered hand meant this man couldn't work properly. Meant this man couldn't care for himself like he should. Hand was withered. We don't know what caused the paralysis. We don't know What else had happened to cause him to be only withered in one hand? But whatever you need to know, he was withered in one hand according to the scripture, but the Lord let his feet work. All right. Sometimes we'll take one disability and and that makes us think we're unable to do anything. No, he had a disability, not an inability. And he certainly didn't have an inability to come to church. He could still take those 2 feet that God gave him to work and walk into the synagogue. And that's what he did. He walked into the synagogue that day. He came in knowing that the possibility of help was in there, and I just got to use what God gave me to get in there. And that's what he did. So my question to you is, what do you have? What's holding you back? What disability are you allowing to cause you to have an inability to worship the Lord? What disability do you have? It may not be physical. It may be something that's mental. It may be something that's emotional. But whatever it is, use what you have to get to the truth that you need. And that's what this man did. As he comes into the temple, to the synagogue, they're watching him. They're watching him. And let me tell you this. We always see people who have issues, who have some problems. And sometimes we have sympathy for them. They need to know this. It could be worse. The situation could be worse. You could have paralyzed hands and legs. You could have the inability to walk or move. Circumstances can always be different. Whether you consider them worse is your decision. I've seen too many people who have what I would consider a completely debilitating illness or physical disability, but they have the best ability because of their attitude. They won't let anything stop you. I've told you before, I think about the time I walked around Walmart, the one right over there on Montclair, one Sunday morning. It was good. I saw it. I had to stop by there on the way to church to get something. I don't know. It had to be something really important for me to stop that early in the morning on the way to church. And we came in there, and as I was parking the car to get out, the Lord let me look over and see a woman get out of a car, and she had no arms, and she was driving. Now, don't ask me how it happened. She had no arms, and she was driving. She was driving. She got out of the car, slung her purse over her neck, got to walking into Walmart, went to walking into Walmart, and there was a row of carts standing there. She got one of them and started pushing it along. We get to an aisle, and I see her using her feet to get items off a top shelf. Nobody was helping her. She was stopping by herself. She had determined that this disability was not going to be an inability to live life on her standard. And then I walk down another aisle, and I see another young lady I've known for a long time. She is in one of the motorized wheelchairs. She's able to walk. She's able to talk. She hollers at me, "Hey, how you doing, Rem? Everything all right?" She's acting like, woe is me. And the Lord wanted me to see those two people. One completely physically able, who was acting like she was in the worst case, in the worst position of her life. And I don't know what was going on with her personally. All I know is she was able to walk in there. She was able to walk in there. She was able to use both hands. She didn't seem to have any physical problems. And she wasn't getting along as well as the one who was born or who didn't have any arms. All a matter of fear. But anyway, this man goes in. They're watching him. Who is the they that are watching him? Versus the Pharisees, the leaders of the temple. You need to know, they paid close attention to what Jesus Christ was doing. Christ knew they were paying attention to him because he understood that they were trying to undermine him in any way they could, because he was a threat to them. He was a threat to their lifestyle. He was a threat to their theology, their understanding of theology. And so they wanted to know if he would heal the man. Yeah, the Bible says that the critics of Jesus expected Jesus to heal this man with the withered hand. They expected to do it. By their expectation, they admitted that Jesus had the power to work. Now watch this now. In your outline, I've got this. So if they expect him to heal this man, that must know that they believe that he has the power to do it. But even though they expect him to do it and know he has the power to do it, that wasn't enough for them to have faith in him to be the Messiah. I don't think you see the hypocrisy here. They knew what he could do. They even set him up to see if he would do what he could do. But they only did it to accuse him, not to celebrate him, not to share him with anybody else. They knew Jesus could do it, yet their knowledge did not draw them to Jesus. That's a sad thing. They called him in and they looked at him with a side eye when he came in. You couldn't have missed him because the way the seating was in the synagogue, they would be seated on the front row. Oh, yeah, they'd have to be seated in the front, in the seats of honor. And they sat there looking askew, askance, as we say today, side-eyed at Jesus when he came in. Their nose up in the air, seeing if he was, in fact, going to heal this man. Not only did they know he was going to heal him, they hoped he would heal this now. They got hope in Jesus, but it's for the wrong reason. They got hope that he'll do something wrong rather than looking at the good he can do for this man. Look at this now. They are looking at Jesus for the wrong reason. And the question would be, is it lawful on the Sabbath that Jesus asked them? Jesus says to them, knowing what they're thinking, knowing what's on their mind, he turns to them, is it lawful on the Sabbath to do good or evil? In other words, to save a life or to kill somebody. In other words, should I not heal this man because y'all looking at me with a side eye, or should I help this man because he's in need of help? Which one is appropriate on the Sabbath day? Let me give you this. See on your outline, it says there's never a wrong day to do something good. There is never a wrong day to do something that is truly good. Never a wrong day for that. All right. So according to their traditions, I got it here. If you cut your finger, you could stop the bleeding, but you could not put any ointment on it because that would be worse. All right, you could stop the bleeding. You couldn't put any A&D ointment on it, or you couldn't put any Bacitracin in it, or you couldn't do any of that because that would be worse. You could stop it from getting worse, but you couldn't do anything to make it any better. Come on now. This is the foolishness that they had. You could stop it from bleeding, but you couldn't put any ointment on it. Yeah. If you saw that your animal fell in a hole, you couldn't pull him out of the hole on a Sunday, even though that by the next day he might be dead. This was the foolishness they had. All right? All right? You might not be able to help him. You look, they were even so confident that there was some exceptions where you might be able to pull a beast out, but you couldn't pull a man out. That's how ridiculous the rules were, and this is what Jesus came into the temple dealing with. You know these rules that folks make you want to live by that don't make no sense. Because those who think they're in power make the rules, and they usually make the rules benefit themselves, and they interpret the rules, and whenever they run into conflict with the rules, they try to change the rules. So Jesus, it says here, and you see it right there in verse 5, Jesus comes in knowing what they're thinking, and it says Jesus got angry. And he looks around at them with anger, but he's angry because of the hardness of their hearts. He's angry that they care more about a rule than they do about a man. That they care more about a concept than they do about a neighbor. He's mad at them because they would see somebody who's in need, who's hurting, who could get some help from him, and they even believe that he can help him, but they would want to put the rule around his neck as opposed to imploring Jesus like the friends did who cut the hole in the roof to heal this man and his hand. They rather catch Jesus doing something good to somebody so they can claim he's wrong in what he's doing. So Jesus is upset with them, angry. One of the rare times in the Bible, you're going to see that Jesus was angry at them. He's angry at the hardness of men's heart. That you can be that low down. So that movie, The Low Down Dirty Shame. That you'll let this man come in here and walk out of here the same way, even though you know there's help in the room for him. So what does Jesus do? Jesus turns around in the face of evil, in the face of outrage, in the face of a block, in the face of a wall, and he does exactly what a good God does. He helps. Tells this man, watch this now, because you need to put this. He tells this man to do something that's impossible. Yeah. He tells this man whose hand is withered, whose hand is paralyzed, to stretch his hand out. God says, what? How can my hand be stretched out, Lord, if it's paralyzed? That's an impossibility. How can that happen? Jesus commanded him to do something impossible. All right? But can I tell you something? God will never command you to do something without enabling you first to do it. It may seem impossible by man's standards, but the very fact that God has told you to do it enables you to perform that task. And somewhere in this man who has lived with this paralyzed hand, this withered hand, according to the Bible, somewhere in there he knows that while it may seem unreasonable, if this man tells me to do what seems impossible, I'm going to at least take him at his word and try. It's the truth, all right? It's the trying that the blessing comes. Do something. Follow his command. At least try to stretch your hand out. And the Bible says it's in that effort that the healing comes. It's in that effort that faith connects and grows. At the command of the Lord, he makes an effort. I need to ask you, do you do that? Do you make an effort? Are you an effort maker? Are you trying to do what's right? The effort to believe is what connects to faith. And it's that effort that connects to faith. And it's through that faith that the healing comes. The effort is what you need. God doesn't tell you to do something except that he expects success. What kind of God would he be if he told you to do something and then put a stumbling block in your way to accomplish it? That would be cruel on his face. Not only that, it wouldn't bring him the glory that he already deserves. So the fact that it comes out of his mouth brings healing. He didn't even have to say it. He could have simply thought it, but he had to give instruction to the man. He had to do it in the face of those Pharisees and Herodians. I'm going to talk to you about that, and then we're gone. He had to give it in the face of those Pharisees and those Herodians so that they understood that he was, in fact, in charge and that he could heal this man. And it didn't matter what day he healed him on, healing and blessing at any time is a good time. All right? And so he comes and he's talking to them about making sure they understand why he has to do it. Can I tell you that these Herodians were simply a political party, in the political season. They had political parties then. They had the Pharisees who worked in the temple, who were the leaders of the law. They do the law. Paul bragged that he was one. All right, Pharisee of Pharisees is what he said. In other words, I'm the boss of the bosses. I knew the word. That's what he said. And then he said there was a political party there. And then there was a political party called the Herodians. These are the ones who believed, these are Jewish people who believed in keeping the Herods on the in ruling authority. So these were Jewish people supporting the Roman placed Herods in authority. You can imagine. They believed that keeping Herods on the bench, I'm sorry, not on the bench, but on the throne, benefited them in some way. And so that's who they supported. And they didn't want anyone to do anything that diminished the power of the Herodians. And so it was this party that was in there that was making sure that everybody stayed in line. Everybody stayed according to the laws that that the Lord had commanded and that they had amended. They had amended. Jesus said, the Bible says that Jesus was filled with rage, upset with them, but it's okay. Because according to Luke 6:11, I put this in your outline. Once Jesus healed this man, it says that the critics of Jesus, this is important because this is a political process as well as a theological one. Every action Jesus takes moves them closer and closer to the day when he becomes the ultimate threat for them. And his healing of the man in the temple on the Sabbath led them to be filled with rage, according to Luke chapter 6, verse 11. And they sought together, the Herodians, the Pharisees, the leaders of the temple started plotting how they were going to destroy Jesus Christ. We're leading to that. And I'll tell you, as we continue going on, how we're going to talk about Jesus will continue to enrage them because he will continue to show at every step that he is the Messiah. This has been another of our more than 45 minutes of praise of I'm sorry we went long tonight. I'm sorry we started late. We'll get it together. God bless you. Take care. Be prayerful. And we'll see you next.